Good day, and welcome to the League of Women Voters Meet the Candidates Forum, a program produced in collaboration with WTJX for well over 35 years. It is our hope that through these programs, you, the voting public, will have a better understanding of each candidate running for elective office in the U.S. Virgin Islands. We invite you to look at all of our programs for the 2022 election year, right here on WTJX, with candidates seeking office as a senator in the 35th legislature or as lieutenant governor or governor. I'm Dr. Gwen Marie Moolenaar, president of the League of Women Voters of the Virgin Islands, and I'm delighted to have today as co-moderator for today's program, attorney Rosalie Simmonds Ballentine, a former attorney general of the U.S. Virgin Islands and a past president of the League of Women Voters. Welcome, Rosalie.
Thank you. I am really delighted to be here, and I am looking forward to an informative and engaging discussion with all of the candidates running for the position of governor of the U.S. Virgin Islands. Thank you, candidates, for participating in today's 2-hour program. Now for the guidelines. The candidates have been informed in advance of the guidelines for this program. No candidate had access to the questions in advance. The first responder to each question will be rotated among the participants. Time allowance for responses varies from 60 seconds to 2 minutes. The time allowed for each question will be announced in advance. Any participant to whom a specific comment is directed will be allowed a rebuttal of 60 seconds. All are expected to be respectful of everyone.
Indeed. And serving as a timer for our candidate responses today is League Board Member Ayantha de Alamal. We are also delighted to welcome this year a small audience to the forum. So let's begin. And we will do so by asking each candidate to simply identify who they are, to state their political affiliation and ballot number. And we'll learn more about each candidate as our discussion ensues. So let's start with candidate number 1, Governor Albert Bryan.
Good day, Virgin Islanders. My name is Albert Bryan Jr. I'm a Democratic gubernatorial candidate, and I hail from the island of St. Croix, where I've lived for over 40 years.
Thank you. And candidate number 2.
Hello, my people. My name is Ronald Pickard. I'm an independent gubernatorial candidate for this year, 2022. It's a pleasure and honor to be here, and I hope to know more about the audience, listen audience, and thank you for attendance.
Okay, and on number 3 on the ballot, Mr.
Yes, hi Virgin Islanders. My name is Stephen Smokey Frett, and I'm an ICM candidate for governor, and I'm glad to be here to express the way I feel about things.
Thank you. And on the ballot, number 4.
Good day to the people of the Virgin Islands. I am Kurt Vialet. I am an independent candidate. I'm happy to be here today, and I want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum tonight.
Thank you, candidates. And now for our very first question, and we'll begin with number 1 on the ballot, Governor Bryan. Governor Bryan, that you are seeking re-election indicates that you believe that your record of the past 4 years support your re-election. Why do you believe you should be re-elected? And you have 2 minutes to make your case.
Good evening, everybody. Why I believe I should be reelected. Well, we listed over 100 accomplishments in the Brian Roach administration. We took over a government that was bankrupt, that didn't have the money or the organizational skills to put the Virgin Islands where it needs to be. We brought in a balanced budget and come in under budget every single year I've been in office. Adding to this, we've solved some of the major problems. The 40-year-old problem of the insolvency of the retirement system was solved in our first term. As I come to you today, over $40 million of road paving in the last 2 years, roads that have not been served in over 40 years. If there was debt for the government, over $100 million in back wages for government workers, and brought our tax returns up to date. And that was only in the first 3 years in office. I ask you for your vote once again, Virgin Islanders, because we have been tried, tested, and proven true. I wouldn't even mention the pandemic, in which we shine not only in the Caribbean, but nationally as an example of how to handle an emergency. I don't know if I can say enough about my Lieutenant Governor and running mate, Tregenza Roach, and the incredible things he has done with the insurance program of the Virgin Islands. Now our insurance guarantee fund is finally funded and is not rated every year to make the budget. There's so many other things I could tell you about why the Bryan Roach team should be reelected and be able to finish out a lot of the other things that we've done. I only have 2 minutes to address you today, but I could talk about all the things we're doing for young people, for seniors, changing the culture of our society and bringing a totally new way of life to the Virgin Islands, one that's prosperous and certainly stronger than ever. Thank you.
Great. You finished before 2 minutes.
The
That's
one
great.
thing I had to ask is we don't have a timer, so it would be helpful
Yeah,
to know.
we do have a timer.
No, but we don't know how much time is
Oh, I
running.
see. Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, thank you, Governor. But clearly, Governor, there are 3 persons who disagree with your assessment, and as they're seeking to replace you. So, challengers, we want each challenger to provide an argument why they should be the one to occupy the position of governor, and you each will have 2 minutes, beginning with number 2 on the ballot, Mr. Pickard.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. So here's the thing. The governor is standing here and he's saying he did a great job. But in reality, we all know that his job has been very weak. Vision. We can see to the fact that education is in the worst condition it's ever been in modern history. We can also see that healthcare is something that's not even spoken. It's in a barbaric state, to the point if you receive any kind of medical injuries or medical treatment that's needed, you have to go off island because the government doesn't provide the proper health care that we need here in the Virgin Islands. We have Juan Louis Hospital and the Trailer House Hospital North that's been in existence for working, and it's now over $100 million. This project was supposed to have been completed a long time ago, and it hasn't. So we spoke about education, and we spoke about healthcare. Those of us that have vehicles, it is obvious that the infrastructure has not even come remotely close to being finished. There are potholes in every single territory of this Virgin Islands. And those little areas where there are no longer potholes, he merely placed a Band-Aid on it. Ronald Pickard and Turbo administration, our whole thing is about accountability. It's that simple. We're here to fix things that the incumbent could not fix, which is clearly. And in order to do that, we must hold people accountable for their actions. You have contractors that were given projects that have expired going on 2 years. Pauline and Julian Stadium, it's knocked down, hasn't been rebuilt again. The Haas track in St. Croix, not to mention St. Thomas, destroyed, still hasn't repaired it. He even promised that by September, the entire territory will be under solar energy. These are words that come from the incumbent himself, which is obviously yet another lie. Transparency is what it's all about, right? We ask for our governor to be transparent, and he clearly hasn't been. But in Pickard terminal administration, our deal is to attack these projects and to complete projects that the governor could not complete.
Thank you. And so, candidate number 3 on the ballot.
Yes, my name is Stephen Smokey Frett. It is clear that the 4 major institutions in any society, they're all in disarray, starting with the health facilities on all 3 islands in disarray. Then you start to talk about feeding ourselves, agriculture. Nothing is happening there. We are so susceptible to whatever takes place outside because we have failed to develop a serious agriculture program. Then you have education. I think that everybody have lost the real definition of education. The purpose of education is to provide through our children the skills that is needed to make our territory viable. We find ourselves in a situation now where We import in teachers, we import in nurses, we import in skills people. What are we doing? And we have a high rate of dropout with our males. And then you have the judiciary system where you have people, by the time they are charged and they spend in jail, by the time they come, their case come up, some of them have already served more time that is required by the infraction that they have made. And then when you talk about probate and all these different situations, is a stockpile that is taking place there. So I'm saying the main institution them, it's not functioning. And also the Virgin Islands, since 1970, when we were allowed to elect our own elected officials, till now, we are still one big consumer market. We are not moving to the position of self-sufficiency, which was also the intention of the United States government for these territories.
Thank you. And now Senator Vialet, candidate number 4.
Thank you so much. Kurt Vialet, number 4 on the ballot. For the past 8 years, I've served in the legislature, 6 years as the chair of the Finance Committee, 6 years in which I can remark as to the wonderful job under my leadership and along with my colleagues that we have been able to produce balanced budget on a regular basis. Balanced budget that have given this governor the flexibility to have additional funds at the end of the year to be able to pay GRS, to be able to pay the 8%, to be able to pay retro monies. If you look at the job of the Finance Committee that has been conducted for the past 6 years, you would see clearly that all waste was cut out of the budget to include frivolous contracts that were sent down from the administration, were cut from the budget to make sure that we were able to live within our means. A lot of talk is about what have been given to the people. I give 8%, I give retro, I give this, I give that. But there's not a lot of discussion about the quality of life issues, education. How is our education system moving? We're in the worst state that we've ever been in, and it's clear. The present commissioner have even admitted that education is in a mess. You look at healthcare, you look at the closure of JFL not open. But every year the governor have literally said it's going to open in a couple of months, it's going to open in a couple of months. It has not occurred. You look at crime, triple homicide, double homicide, but silence. And the only thing you're hearing is, I paid the 8%, I paid this. But what happened to the quality of life issues that face Virgin Islanders on a regular basis? What happened to all those individuals who have blue tops on their roof and cried last week when torrential rain came and we had elderly citizens, 70-something, 80-something years old, mopping all day. And we have the nerve to say we are stronger than ever, or we better than 3 years, 8 months ago? Look at the present situation in the Virgin Islands and tell me what is better.
Thank you.
Ready for forward movement.
Good. So, Governor, you have 2 minutes to rebut because many of them were similar comments.
Oh.
So, yeah, so instead of saying for each one, you have a full 2 minutes to rebut.
Thank you. And thank you, Virgin Islanders. Over the last 3.5 years, we didn't talk about it. You and I, we worked together to make things better. These gentlemen here all mean well, but they don't have the capability to do well. Mr. Vialet is insisting that because he edited a book, that he wrote it. Many people write budgets. I had a friend that told me she writes a budget every week, but when she goes to the grocery store, the food just adds up to more than what she budgeted for it, and she doesn't know how it works. This is the same thing with Mr. Vialet. Mr. Vialet has never run a budget of more than 10 million, 5 million, 1 million, even 600,000. He's telling you he's going to do a better job. Mr. Vialet has never worked outside of education. He's never had a leadership position, even in the legislature. Mr. Vialet has never served on any major board, WAPA, EDA, PSC. Mr. Vialet is an educator who never thought that it was wise to head the education committee with all the problem he says is occurring. What Mr. Vialet knows is true is that our economy is doing so well. And the reason why it's doing well is because we had the opportunity to make decisions in a snap judgment during COVID. These other gentlemen, I'm sure they mean well as too, but they actually have no government experience. Mr. Frett has only served in the legislature for 1 term. And Mr. Pickard, I don't know where he spent his term. But when you come down to it, this administration has proven over and over again that we can actually manage a budget, not edit it. And why have all of the bright ideas come within the last few months? Realize this, that they're saying that they have the worst education system and the worst healthcare system, but we have 8 brand new pre-Ks. Every student now has a computer. Our high schools, when there's a day off or rain, they could do the work from home. Teachers have gotten the best contracts they ever had. And our healthcare system has survived a pandemic, a global 100-year pandemic, intact with the lowest death rate in America.
Thank you. Thank you. 45 seconds.
Thank you so much. The governor speaks
45
about
seconds.
experience in the government of the Virgin Islands. He says that I have been in education alone. He only served as Commissioner of Labor. And during his tenure as Commissioner of Labor, we had a consent decree. We had mismanagement of federal funds. We had funds being spent to send individuals to college and not accounted for. So to act like because you're in a position that you're the only one qualified just leaves me speechless, because I don't see how you're going to make up your own criteria as to who or how you're supposed to become a governor based on qualifications. So he just lists a number of qualifications that literally I have never heard before as a prerequisite for a governor. Secondly, the legislature is responsible to pass a balanced budget, not the executive branch. The executive branch isn't responsible to pass a balanced budget. They submit the budget to the legislature of the Virgin Islands. It is our responsibility to pass a balanced budget, and I did that.
Yeah, Mr.
Rebuttal.
Yeah,
No.
no, we can't do that. Mr. Frett, I didn't hear a negative statement made about you, and Mr. Pickard,
No,
I
but
didn't hear
an
a negative
incorrect
statement.
statement that he has made. You said you don't have to be about me, but it's an incorrect statement about me, which he stated. And that was, I only serve in the legislature. I have worked in the government for 15 years. And I have also run a business for 30 years. Which one of these guys, especially the governor, has run a business? He doesn't even know what it takes to meet a payroll and deal with all the taxes that this government have on the small businesses. Come on, people, don't be fooled by this guy talking this kind of crap.
Thank
He just don't know he's green. When he was commissioner of
45
of
seconds.
labor,
45
it was a
seconds, Mr.
failure.
45
He never
seconds,
did
Mr.
anything. The 8% that they took away from the people, he was commissioner. He didn't protect labor.
Thank you. Mr. Pickard, 45 seconds.
45 seconds?
Yeah.
So it's so simple. The governor's standing here and he's giving his whole resume.
Excuse me, you addressed something that he said about you.
Yes, ma'am. So he said, where have I been? So I'm going to tell
Yeah.
him where I've been.
45 seconds.
So where I've been for almost 40 years as a businessman. I've ran residential properties. I've done everything that pertains to business. Like Mr. Frett said, I was in charge of scheduling and everything as well. But one thing for sure, I did not try to do. I did not do. I did not defraud the government. I did not attempt to defraud the government. However, Mr. Bryan here, he attempted to defraud the government by giving his daughter $1 million contract when he knew for a fact that she had no license. He knew for a fact she never had a permit, but he attempted to defraud the government. And when the people spoke out, he tried to throw it to Lieutenant Governor Roach to take the rap.
So now I got 90 seconds, right?
90, no, not 90
Next
seconds.
question.
Well, I got him and
Next
No,
question.
I'm very sorry. No. We do have to, and in your comments moving forward, you could include some of these rebuttals,
But
okay? Because
Mr.
you will
Vialet,
have
Mr.
you will have
Vialet
the
said a
opportunity.
blatant lie on the governor. The Department of Labor has never been under a consent decree.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on because you will be able to address one of the questions we're asking will allow you to address one of these specifically. So our second question then is, being a governor means you are in some ways similar to a top administrator or a leader of a very large enterprise. So to demonstrate your leadership style, can you identify any administrative or leadership challenge that you have had to manage in your professional career and describe the strategies that you use to address that administrative challenge? And our first responder is Mr. Pickard.
Yes, ma'am. So about a year and a half now, I'm the CEO and founder of a nonprofit organization. It's called Adopt an Inmate. It takes a major, major role. To the point right now we are tax exempt finally.
Excuse me, I didn't indicate that you have 2 minutes.
I'm sorry?
2 minutes.
2 minutes?
Yeah, go ahead.
So we start over again?
No. Go ahead.
Okay.
She's keeping track. Go ahead.
So as the CEO of this nonprofit organization, Adopt an Inmate, it takes a lot of work to become a nonprofit. And what I specialize in is inmates transitioning from prison to society. There is absolutely no one here for them. I am the only nonprofit organization that actually offers something to the inmates coming out, transitioning back into society. I've made several attempts to try to get in contact with the director for the Bureau of Prisons. My staff members, I've even tried to contact his office to demand that she responds to our response. I created a curriculum that will help inmates 6 months to the door. What we want to do is to invite them back into society and correct their lifestyle and make them gentlemen. So to be a CEO of an organization like that takes a lot of effort, takes a lot of time, but most importantly, it's all about transparency. I'm here to tell these ex-felons that there is life after prison. And there's one thing I always tell ex-felons coming out. Don't ever let anybody talk about you or try to degrade you as an ex-felon, like the governor did. Nelson Mandela served over 27 years in a hardcore prison in South Africa. And he came out and he ran for presidency and he became the president of South Africa. You know what people told Nelson Mandela, ma'am? They said, don't do it. You're gonna make a fool out of yourself. They're not gonna look at you as a changed person. But he ignored that. He didn't allow fellow politicians, dignitaries, to try to discourage him from making South Africa a better place. I am Ronald Pickard. I'm here to show you proof that not only that there's life after prison, but that you could become somebody. You can come back in a very society that condemn you and come back and help the very society. And we all have to come together as people and be transparent. I tell people all the time I'm a businessman. I'm not a politician. But I'm as smart as a politician. And the whole thing here that we're suffering in the Virgin Islands is our people are not being given a second chance in life. It's just like in the EDA.
Time. Thank you very much. Mr. Frett, what challenge have you had that will demonstrate your administrative capability?
Well, I own a small business where we have had employees between 8 and 10, and I supervise them. And also, I was the chief criminal investigator in Internal Revenue, where I supervise an employee. And my style is simply this. You facilitate, you're a facilitator. You're not a power-hungry person. You try to bring out the best out of your employees and make them feel that they are part of what's taking place. You make your vision clear to them and allow them to participate in this particular vision. This is our style. And it have worked for us. Arian's Bar and Restaurant have been in business for over 30 years. And look at us today. When last have any of you been down there? Look at what we have transformed this little industry to be. Come on, people. Let's be real.
Thank you. Senator Vialet, how do you demonstrate your administrative style by some challenge that you've had?
Let me begin by saying that I have a master's degree in administration and supervision. In 1995, I had a unique opportunity to open a new high school on the island of St. Croix, the St. Croix Educational Complex, to manage a staff of 130 individuals, to be able to manage over 1,600 students, to create schedule, to design a magnet program that became the shining star of the Virgin Islands public school system. I have been in education for 29 years, and I find it cynical for someone to sit here or stand here and try to say that because you are an educator, that you are not ready to be the governor of the Virgin Islands. It's hard to fathom somebody that is going to say that. I challenge the governor to try to run a school for 1 week, to try to manage a classroom for 1 week, to try to schedule 1,600 students, to manage a staff of 130 individuals. I challenge the governor to try to do that. And if you believe that that is not management, then I don't know exactly what you're thinking. But clearly my experience in education qualifies me for this position. Because by being in education, I know exactly what the problems are. Because they came to school every day. They shared. I know those who are doing well, I know those who struggle, and I know those families who can't make ends meet because I lived it every single day. I know what it is to go in my pocket to buy a student uniform, to buy a book bag, to buy lunch. I know what that is. So I am right there. I am very close to totally understanding what this community goes through on a regular basis. And I know what is needed to make this community whole. We must invest in our people. Government job is to invest in our people.
Thank you. Governor?
Good evening again. I never said that being an educator doesn't make you prepared to govern. Governor Charles Turnbull is one of our greatest governors. What I did say, though, is that when you prepare yourself to be governor, you don't prepare yourself by running elections. You prepare yourself by running governments, running nonprofits, getting involved in a situation where you actually have control. A greatest problem that we ever had, that I had to overcome administratively, that's easy, COVID. How do we balance the safety of Virgin Islanders and still be able to have economic activity? How do we make sure that we're involved in DC and able to work with the delegate to make sure that every single penny that regular Americans on the mainland get, we get there too? How do I do my style? I got everybody together every morning at 8:10, and we would discuss everything that would happen. I created a level playing field so that they felt comfortable telling me what the problems were. I didn't bark at them and criticize them like people get when they go to the legislature. I listened to the information. I challenged them, they challenged me. And then we moved forward with an action plan for the day. That action plan saved lives. In the first 3 months, they told me 200 people would die. That's a serious thing to say. And yet, we survived. We not only survived, we figured out a way to create the greatest tourist explosion in the Caribbean during that time and came out on top, still keeping our people safe. I realized that my talent is to be able to make tough decisions in clutch places and be able to stand by them until they are fulfilled. Now, my opponents will tell you they have experience, but I've managed over 6,000 employees on a daily basis, 26 departments, and over 6 semi-autonomous agencies. Managing, when you don't have a cruise ship in St. Thomas for a year and a half, they tell you that your money is running out, and you made every payroll, and people, whether they stayed home or they came to work, everybody had a chicken in their pot.
Thank you. Thank you. So, okay.
Is there any more?
I didn't
Just
hear,
one
I
thing
didn't hear
I'd
a
like to say.
point, I know, I didn't hear a point directed against you.
We're
We
going to
move
move on.
Yes.
We're going to
Rebuttal.
move on.
He called the legislature. He said when commissioners come before the
But
legislature,
Senator Vialet, the legislature is a body. We're going to move
of which I'm
on.
a part of.
We're going to move on. Please, gentlemen. And I would ask you all, please, I think that the audience wants to hear what are your strategies and your plans to move these islands forward, okay? And we want to hear that, okay? Not attacks on each other. We want to hear what can we expect from any of your administrations if you're successful in this election. So my next question is also with respect to administration, and we will start with you, Mr. Frett, and you
Yes.
will have 90 seconds. In the majority of states on the mainland, the lieutenant governor does not have the range nor the level of responsibilities as our lieutenant governor. Why did you choose the particular person that you've chosen as your lieutenant governor? And how do you see him or her prepared to assume the demanding responsibilities of the office?
Well, I chose him because Mr. Miller, I have every confidence in Mr. Miller. He's educated, and he also shares the same philosophy and goal that we have for the Lieutenant Governor's office. One of our main thing is we're going to phase out property tax eventually. We know we have to replace it with a different tax, but we are ready to do that. You know, so I have every confidence in him. And also, when the purpose of making the lieutenant governor in charge of the lieutenant governor's office was because in the past, the lieutenant governor was just there to get votes. But I want Mr. Miller to govern with me also. And if we could change that order, we will change it because I want Mr. Miller to run the day-to-day activities of St. Croix. He lived there, he know it better than I. And when it comes to situation that involves the whole territory, we will sit down and we will discuss it. I have every confidence in Mr. Miller, his education, and he shares the same philosophy and goal for our people.
Thank you. Senator Vialet?
Let me begin by saying my running mate is a female, the only female on the ballot. My running mate is a millennial, the only millennial on the ballot. My running mate has a different sexual persuasion, only one on the ballot. I believe in Janelle Sarro. She's a brilliant young lady. She has served in the legislature for the past 6 years, and we have a lot of similar philosophies. I have seen her ability to make hard decisions. I have seen where she's not scared to step out of the box. I have seen where she proudly represents who she is as a person. And I believe that those are the characteristics that you need in order to move this territory forward. When tough decisions came before the legislature, Senator Janelle Sarro did not run. She made those decisions whether or not there was public flack, public outcry, but she made decisions that were in the best interest of the people of the Virgin Islands. And that is what we need in order to run the office of the Lieutenant Governor. We presently have issues with cadastral, record of deeds, a number of different areas. We need to make some tough decisions moving forward. And I know that General Sarro, who is very educated, will be able to lead the charge.
Thank you. Governor Bryan?
Why I picked Tregenza Roach? Well, the first thing that's very obvious, ladies and gentlemen, is character. Mr. Roach is an upstanding citizen who stands for what he believes and believes what he stands for. This gentleman, I was attracted initially because he put forth a bill that said, hey, let's give college education to our young people for free. It's cheaper than putting them in jail, and in the long run, all of us will pay off. That is a thinker. And when you hear Tregenza talk, every time you hear him speak, there's something to be learned. The other thing I love about Tregenza is that he doesn't want to be governor. He wants to be the lieutenant governor. And the first time I met him, you know what he said to me? He said that he wanted to perfect his job as a senator. He said no 3 times because he believes that. Too many people want to do other people's jobs. And lastly, qualification. My running mate is a barred attorney. He has experience in education at the university, at the Board of Education. He has experience in private practice and doing his own stuff. He's an accomplished author and a notable speaker heard around the Caribbean. Mr. Roach, Attorney Roach, Uncle Roach, whatever it is, the title you call him, he's always has the temperament and the voice of reason. The perfect person to be a support to the governor of the Virgin Islands, the steady voice of reason that always gives me the alternative side of the story and a chance to make another decision. Never too pushy, but always in support of the governor of the Virgin Islands. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor. And Mr. Pickard?
Hi. So the question is, it's not why did I choose Mr. Elroy Turnbull? It's thank God I chose Mr. Elroy Turnbull. This is a businessman. But before I go there, he's a dedicated husband to his wife and to his children. He knows how it is to work from 8 to 5, the struggle in the streets. I didn't want a running mate that walked around wearing a tie and a suit, sitting down in the air-conditioned office, sucking up all the air conditioning. I didn't want that. I want a lieutenant governor that's gonna be right there in the streets, that's gonna be in every single department in the government to find out exactly what's going on. This is the first time you'll have a lieutenant governor that you'll see him everywhere. What's going on? Why this isn't run like this? It's called accountability. The first thing Mr. Turnbull told me when I flew to St. Thomas, he said, no, Pickard, you gotta come to St. Thomas, I want to see you. I said, great, I gotta fly there now. So he said, the first thing I want you to do, Mr. Pickard, is take the handcuffs off of me when I become lieutenant governor. I was kind of curious, what do you mean take off the handcuffs? He says, I mean, I want to go out there and do my job. I want people to see me. I don't want people to see me on the latter end of re-election. I want to know what's going on. And that's the only way we can hold people accountable for their actions. There are so many employees that have so many grievances that have not even been heard. There's no response for the grievance. And you know how it is for the regular John Doe to go to work knowing that your cries of complaints are not being answered, but you can't even quit your job because you're going to need that Cigna insurance. You have children. But it would be nice to know that you can go to work knowing that the lieutenant governor and the governor actually took time out of the day to listen to you. We will have an open house.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pickard.
Thank you.
Okay. Our next question also deals with the work of the Office of the Lieutenant Governor. And we will start with you, Senator Vialet, and you will have 60 seconds. The late Senator Berry, several years ago, pursued the idea of separating the Division of Banking, Insurance, and Financial Regulations from the Office of the Lieutenant Governor and establishing it as a separate department reporting directly to the governor. What do you think of that idea? And could you please justify whatever response you give? 60 seconds.
I would leave the office under the Office of the Lieutenant Governor. But I do believe that we need to have a an insurance commissioner need to be hired. I don't think that all the responsibilities should fall under the Lieutenant Governor, but you should be able to hire someone that is going to be in charge of insurance. I truly believe that you need someone that have the skill set, that have the education, that have the knowledge of that particular area, and not every Lieutenant Governor should have to become a fast study in order to run that particular division. The role of the Lieutenant Governor is a very, very important role. The Office of the Lieutenant Governor generates a lot of revenues for the government of the Virgin Islands. So it's very, very important that we maintain the structure that we have, but that we're able to bring individuals on board that would allow us to enhance the services that we provide on a regular basis. And insurance is a tricky area, so you need somebody that truly understands insurance, you need somebody that truly understands banking, and I would move to have somebody in that particular position.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Bryan?
Yes, I happen to agree with Senator Vialet. I would leave it under banking, under the Lieutenant Governor's office. I think that our Lieutenant Governor has been able to do some great things, being able to get a lot of his divisions actually certified by national agencies, and bringing people in to definitely digitize the systems. A lot of the stuff that we're doing now, like filing for your business, you can actually do it online. I had the experience the other day. It's very quick and very efficient. As somebody who did business licenses and filing papers for corporations and trademarks as my business, I knew how hassling it was to go back and forth. Now, all of that is computerized. There's a lot of work that goes on there, but him being an attorney gives it an extra push, because not only is he able to manage, but he knows the law very well. He takes his job very seriously. A lot of people think when you become the Lieutenant Governor that you're sitting by the governor's side all day, but it's actually a full-time job managing all 6 of those offices in there.
Thank you, Governor. Mr. Pickard?
Hi. So it looks like we were actually in agreement on one thing tonight, which I do believe my thing is to keep it under the Lieutenant Governor's office. But here's the thing. Insurance is very, very tricky. Most of the white-collar crimes are committed under fraud insurance. That's why it's highly imperative that we must hire somebody of professional skills to sit in these offices to make sure things are done right day by day. Make sure that everything is being held accountable. Make sure every claim is up to par. And the way by doing that is making sure that we place people in there that are actually qualified for position. In the Pickard Turnbull administration, there will be no nepotism or favoritism or being placed in a position because of political favors. When you do that, the department itself as a whole goes completely down. So rest assured, one thing for sure in our administration, everyone that's placed in a particular department, rather in every department, he or she will be qualified to run it.
Thank you, Mr. Pickard. Mr. Frett? Same question.
Yes, I have no problem with it staying under the Lieutenant Governor's office, but we need a director of insurance. But one of the things I want us to consider, though, because we had this discussion many years ago, moving the property tax out of the Lieutenant Governor's office and put it under IRB. That was a discussion we had many years ago, and it never went ahead because of, for whatever reason. But the Frett Miller team and administration would definitely consider moving that from under the Lieutenant Governor's office over to the Bureau of Internal Revenue.
Okay, great. So we move on to the next question. And we want to talk about your vision for the territory. In 2027, we're going to be marking the 100th anniversary of American citizenship here in the Virgin Islands. So we have a two-part question, and it is this: what is your vision with respect to self-governance for the Virgin Islands, and B, and for political status? And what role will you play, if any, in these movements? And so we begin with Governor Bryan.
And thank you for the,
Yeah.
how much time we
And
have?
for this, you're going to have 3 minutes, because you're going to be talking about a constitution, and you're going to be talking about political status and your role. So you have 3 minutes.
And thank you for that. I really think that we need to move forward on this. We've had many constitutional conventions and discussions about what our status should be. We're at a point now where our community is so diverse. The real problem is being able for the legislature to make those decisions by a majority of a 2/3 vote. So getting the Organic Act adopted as our interim constitution and moving forward in a way that would allow us to move it as we go along. So much controversy has come up because of these constitutional conventions over the year, and we never get it resolved. The questions about who's from here and who ain't from here and what rights they should have. We are one Virgin Islands, and people who come here are American citizens. I want to continue in that vein and being an American citizen, but I do want to have the status that allows us to go to Washington and have a say and be much more than a lobbyist on the wall talking to representatives about what we need. We need to have the kind of strings that will control things like our immigration, where people come and go from the island, especially in this time when so many of us have friends and family in the Eastern Caribbean and in the Northern Caribbean that could come here and help us with all of the rebuilding that we need to do. We need to be able to make sure that we collect all our taxes in a way that we get the $13.50 per proof gallon for our rum and have the right to do that through our Constitution. We're about to open the oil refinery again, and we should be getting the cover over tax on all the oil we ship to the United States. Imagine the kind of progress we can make when we self-determine where our land should be, who should have the rights in order to do certain things in the Virgin Islands and make our economy grow. Right now, that's not up to us. We just got the Earned Income Tax Credit passed, which allows us finally to get reimbursed for the money we had to divvy out because of tax changes in the United States. We're currently in a situation where we'll get that money back and finally we'll be able to stay current with our taxes. But if we're just flipping in the wind with everything that Congress does without a say about who's a president or who's a congressman or who's a senator, then we can't really say we're a strong, independent people. This is one of the things that I really want to work on in the next 4 years, making sure that our status is aligned, that we understand who we are as American citizens, and we're maximizing the use and the benefit of being a territory where we can give tax breaks, handle our immigration, but still get all the benefits of being able to participate in the greatest democracy in the world. Thank you.
So are you saying that you're going to take an active role in this?
Absolutely. It's the one thing that is, I will always admit, that is on our platform that we have not executed. And a lot of that is due to tell you the truth, we are always preempted in the legislature, and that is preempted by Senator Sarro, who has been holding that bill and stopping it from moving forward. So we're hoping that in this next legislature, without that blockage, we can really move forward and be able to do something with the status.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Pickard.
So to start off, there's none of us here that can stand here and promise you that we can get this bill and that bill passed. That would be a lie. What we need to do is establish a relationship between the governing house as well as the Senate. We have to make sure that when we send something down, or rather when I send something down as governor, that we establish a relationship that is no animosity, that you vote a no just because you don't like Ronald Pickard. So a no for me means it's a no against the people of the Virgin Islands. Or if the Senate sends something up, I can't knock it down just because of the fact that I have a bad relationship with one in the Senate. And this is something that's been going on for donkey years. I ask that we continue to work together as one. Taxes. I do not believe in the lifetime taxes that we give to major companies coming into the Virgin Islands. Small companies here in the Virgin Islands are suffering. In order for you to get a multi-million-dollar contract, you need $1 million to $2 million insurance bond.
Mr. Pickard, I'd like you to focus on governance, constitution,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
political status.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, so as it pertains to governing, here's the thing. The Organic Act has been attacked 5 times trying to get change. I feel as governor, we need to take one step at a time as it pertains to the Organic Act and see if we can get that passed. Once that is passed, we can continue to strike step by step with the Constitution so we can all be in one level balanced field. As it pertains to politicians, you said, right?
Political status.
Political status.
Yeah, our relationship with the U.S.
Now, that's something that's highly imperative. We have to continue keeping a political status with the United States of America. Why? When it all boils down to it, we have to go to the United States to ask for help. But we have to keep transparency. Because even in the United States, when they look down here at the Virgin Islands and they see all the money that's been missing, that's just disappeared, they hesitate to give us more money. If you ask for $10 million if we ask for $10 million up there for the United States, up in Congress, and we only spend $5 million, and $5 million has to be sent back up, we didn't need $10 million. So that leaves questions and doubts in the minds of those politicians up there in the United States. We don't want to have any doubts in the minds of our politicians or Congress. We want them to know that when we ask for something, we actually need it.
What role will you play in the movement for a constitution and movement for resolution of political status?
So my role for that would basically be, well, my role will be deep into that. I'll be hands-on to assist those who need assistance in that to make sure that things are passed by for the benefit of the people of the Virgin Islands. And that's pretty much my role in that, is to state it's not to be, not more so in a bully aspect, but in an aspect that's to help to make sure that these things are passed through, to make sure we have an open communication with each other so that we can actually get that job done.
Thank you. Mr. Frett.
Well, when it comes to the Constitution, we have always advocated status before Constitution. There's no doubt. You know, all this back down with the Constitution is because we have failed to define our status first. We need to define our status, and that will give us the freedom to put in this document what the people of the Virgin Islands wants, not what United States wants. And secondly, we got to be mindful that we don't have any choice in this matter. The United States has signed on in the UN to decolonize all of its colonies, and we are still considered a colony. So whether we want to or we don't want to, it's coming. We have to be prepared. And the best way to be prepared is to put the facts in school, make it a class, so that every child will have to study what are the options. And when they become adults, at least in high school, and when they become adults, they'll be able to make informed decision as what is the best status that they think the Virgin Islands can flourish under.
So what role will you play in
I
the
will put it
movement?
in the schools immediately. We're talking about this, but if you ask most people on the street or in the school, what does this status stand for? Nobody knows. It's only the intellectual people in our community wants to make this decision. Let's put it in the school. Let's educate our people. And that's what I will do.
Thank you. Mr. Senator Vialet.
There's presently a bill in the legislature that seeks to reconvene a 6th constitutional convention. The bill should be heard before the end of this year, and the bill is sponsored by my running mate, Senator General Sarro. There's some misconceptions in reference to the bill in which individuals feel that the legislature can mandate the adoption of the Organic Act. We can't do that. We can only convene a constitutional convention. Those delegates are selected, those are the individuals that must make the decision as to whether or not they want to adopt the Organic Act or whether or not they're going to write a new constitution. A constitution must be by the people, for the people. It's not by a select group. So we have to make sure that we follow the process as prescribed by Congress. There are other territories that have constitutions in place. So we'll be joining that list of territories. However, in reference to our status, the unincorporated territory, we're not the United States, the Virgin Islands. We're the Virgin Islands of the United States. And by having that designation, there's a lot of areas that are not fairly applied to the Virgin Islands as it is applied to other states on the mainland. You look at our Medicaid reimbursement. We're getting ready to go back to 55%. We are not calculated on any formula that is comparable to any state in the nation to include the state that have the lowest calculation. You look at the insular cases that we are still governed by, our inability to get SSI benefits, the amount of unfair practices that are levied on the Virgin Islands on a regular basis, and those are the areas that we must address. I would ask for a status referendum, a status commission, where we're able to educate individuals on the various status options available to the people of the Virgin Islands. We must get that education out. Puerto Rico have tried it for years in terms of the education process and still have not been able to move from step A to step B. But in the Virgin Islands, we need to begin that discussion. We need to begin that discussion about self-governance. We got to begin to talk about those issues that are going to allow us more self-governance. I was happy as a legislature to be a part of it when we were able to bring the Supreme Court. Okay, that is self-governance for the Virgin Islands. So we got to continue along the path. The status, the Constitutional Convention bill, it's going to come, but it has to be carefully drafted. It's not something that you just rush. It has to be carefully drafted. And we have worked in conjunction with the League of Women Voters on that constitutional bill, Constitutional Convention bill. So I will definitely be a part of the process and will continue to push for the Virgin Islands to be able to adopt its own constitution.
Well, the League is definitely waiting for that bill to come forward. We've been waiting for quite a while. And so let's go. There's been a lot of talk among you about transparency and accountability. So this is the question that I'm going to ask. And our first response is going to be you, Mr. Pickard, and you will each have 2 minutes to address this. I think you'd all agree that trust in the leader is essential for good governance. Trust is built on several pillars, at least 2 of which are accountability and transparency. So as governor, how will you build trust in your leadership through your accountability and your transparency if elected? And you each have 2 minutes to address that. Mr. Pickard?
So here's the thing. People lack communication with the people of the Virgin Islands. All we ask for is transparency. All we want you to do is tell us the truth. What can we expect? When can we expect it? And how can we utilize the actual projects that you said is going to be completed? But when you have so many projects that's been promised to you by the incumbent that will be completed, and it's not, people just starts to lose trust. When, as a governor, you tell the people of the Virgin Islands in September, the entire island will be solarized. Where in September is not solarized, you begin to lose trust. When you come in as a new governor, people look at you as some sort of a savior for the problems they've been experiencing for years. The biggest problem, the biggest thing people talk about is the fact that there's no transparency. How can we believe the governor when he said he's going to do A, B, and C, and it's not being done? Then the first thing the governor says, I inherit this when he came into this administration. You're supposed to inherit it. I'm going to inherit everything that Mr. Bryan hasn't done when he comes into administration. But I guarantee you what, when I do say a particular project will be completed, that project will be completed. It is the only way. Once these projects are completed, then the people can stand by and say, wow, the governor really did say he's going to complete these projects, that he did exactly what he said he's going to do. And to be honest with you, that's all the people look for. But when projects just sit there, when you have so many, you have more abandoned buildings that belongs to the government than belongs to residents. That's a problem. When people sit there and they see physically with their eyes that nothing's being done, we can all agree that this is the most money in this administration that the Virgin Islands has ever had in history due to COVID-19. So he would say, we are rich, we have so much money, but we're poor in performances. This is something that is factual. In
Yeah.
Pickard terminal administration,
Remember, the focus,
count
ladies
on
and
us.
gentlemen, is going to be on your strategies for accountability, your strategies for transparency. So rather than just simply talking about the illnesses, doesn't really advance your cause. So, Mr. Frett,
It doesn't advance your cause with whom?
the
That's a
voting
question I
public,
would
the
like to
public is
answer.
looking. So what are you
And
going to
then
do?
secondly, I would like to say that trust does not begin when I become governor. I've been living in the Virgin Islands for over 60 years. And we have been out there for our people. When the hurricane hit with no roof on, we cooked and offered $10 a plate for our people. And our people today have still asked us to keep it at $10 because times are still difficult. And we still do that. When we have the caroling in the garden for Christmas, we went there and we saw that people come up early, they come to sing, but there's nothing, no hot tea, no food. We began that. We tell our people, the brothers on the street, anytime you don't have any money, don't get in trouble, and you're hungry, come to Arians. So the people trust Smokey Frett, not because he going into a position, because he have been active in the community all these years for the people. So that's how our trust begins. Transparency, I am working for the people. What do I have to hide? I don't have anything to hide. But one of the things that I think we need to understand, that no matter how we're working for our people, and if our people has lost faith, no matter how good it is, have lost faith in an institution, it is our responsibility to change it. And we have not done that with the election system. And our people have lost faith. We are working for the people. Transparency to the legislature, to our people, we have no problem with that. We are working for you. You are our bosses.
Thank you. Senator Vialet, what strategies are you going to use to demonstrate transparency and accountability?
Vialet, our administration would adhere to the laws as prescribed by the Virgin Islands Code. We have laws in the book. We have laws that must be followed, but laws that are circumvented at certain times. We have the Office of Disaster Recovery, which should really adhere to the laws as prescribed by the Virgin Islands Code. But for certain projects, it's under Property and Procurement, and other projects, it's under the Public Finance Authority, where that process is not as transparent. We gotta eliminate all no-bid contracts. We know that when we put in contracts out for a certain amount, that you must put it out and you can't just select one particular company. We gotta move away from giving inside information to certain companies or making certain companies the prime contractor for the government of the Virgin Islands. The Virgin Islands presently has enough money that everyone can have a seat at the table. It should not be a select few that continue to reap the benefits, and we're not seeing the rewards for the Virgin Islands. The lack of transparency now, we have seen where the administrative costs within the Housing Finance Authority have soared, but we're not seeing the work. So you're seeing $14 million spent on the Envision program, but less than $1 million in homes completed. Why is that happening? These are the areas that we gotta concentrate on. These are the areas that even the federal government are concerned with. We got to make sure that when we're spending these monies, we're being clear and transparent. We gotta make sure that it's not going to a preferred bidder that is somebody that the governor wants to get that particular contract. The way that we are managing these federal funds, we can clearly see that the funds are not getting on the street. And we have to make sure that we change what is currently taking place and begin to get those monies on the street so that we can see how it's going to improve the Virgin Islands.
Thank you. Governor Bryan?
The Brian Roach administration is the most transparent administration in the history of the Virgin Islands. Every single transaction that we make in the government of the Virgin Islands is available for you, or even Mr. Vialet to look at. We have a website where you could go up and you could see how much money any business made, what contracts were made to the government. From the very first time I started running, I told people 3 things I'm gonna do. I'm gonna restore trust in government through transparency. I'm gonna take that trust and bring investment, and I'm gonna take that investment and invest it in people. And that's what I've done. And the irony of this situation is that Mr. Vialet says you need to follow the law, but the legislature is the least transparent organization in the government. No one questions the legislature budget. Have you ever seen a hearing where they took their own administrative officer and put them in front of the legislature to answer the questions about what the senator has done with his money? They never did. Have you ever seen the legislature put up a website where it's transparent, where you could see the transactions that they're doing? There is no transparency. For years, Mr. Vialet and his running mate have given no-bid contracts to their buddies, 5,000, 6,000, employing them with the government's money with no accountability. Our administration implemented the credit card system, just like Mr. Vialet and his friends at the legislature wanted us to do. We set up the transparency website so you can see everything that would be, every bid that goes out is on the website. And what we're doing now is we're making it electronic. Every single federal dollar is accounted for. Go to ODR.com, go to the PFA website, go to the Housing Finance Authority website. We show you how much money was allotted, how much we have actually been committed and actually encumbered, and how much money we have spent. It is very transparent. We have every show you could think of telling Virgin Islanders about what we're doing, whether it's the press box or the press briefing that we have every single Monday telling you what we're doing. Have you seen that for the legislature and the head of the finance committee? Ask yourself a question.
Thank you.
Is that transparent?
Thank you. Yes, 60 seconds.
My office, I don't have any contracts. I have staff that work with me on a regular basis. I don't have any contract employees for $5,000 or $6,000, so that is literally not true. The legislature is the entity that passed credit card legislation to be able to rein in the spending of government when we saw credit card balances that were out of the wigwam, and we needed to control those balances and determine a process as to how credit cards would be issued and how monies would be spent. And we did that in conjunction with the Commissioner of Finance, and we did that in conjunction with the Director of OMB to create a policy to move forward. In reference to the legislature being transparent, you call the Senate President. That's the role of the Senate President. That's not the role of an individual senator to put up what the central staff of the legislature, how those monies are being spent. That is the role of the president. And I am positive that the legislature could provide any type of financial documentation that the governor has spoken about.
Thank you, thank you. I didn't hear him make a point of...
He said you, referring to me, and about I need to call the Senate President, and I would like to argue that he champions himself as a head of the Finance Committee. Mr. Pickard here was right, accountability. There is no accountability that he has demanded from the Senate President or any place else. He's been in charge for 8 years.
That's 45 seconds, you know. It's just 45 seconds, yeah.
Yeah, and not once has he demanded to have transparency from the legislature and his colleagues. All he wants to do is question every single body that comes before him about what they're doing with their money, which is fine. But have you ever seen a post-audit report for the legislature that accounts for where these dollars are being sent, where trips are being gone to, who is going on those trips? Are they given the receipts for those trips? Totally unaccountable. And I think this is unacceptable. And if he is as fiscally responsible as he says he is, he should be making moves to make sure that happens, at least over the last 8 years.
Yeah. I think, no, you were not attended to, Mr. Pickard. And so what we're going to do now is that we're going to go to a brief break. Nice. And I'm going to ask the viewing audience to stay with us. We've got a lot more coming. Thank you.
We care about things that affect the lives of every American.
We are there at the front line
to get to the heart of what really matters in every issue.
This country has not seen this in 80 years.
This extraordinary moment in American history.
You're making such a huge impact.
Trust is at the heart of what we do.
So welcome back to this second hour of our Gubernatorial Forum. The participants are all in place, and so we will begin. Senator Frett, I should say former Senator Frett, the first question, you will begin with the first question. In a recent poll, voters identified 4 areas of major concern: education, crime, health, and WAPA. Let's examine them and see how each of you will address these issues if elected governor. Your emphasis, please, in your response should be on your strategies for resolution of the problem rather than your empathy regarding the problem.
Could you call them one at a time, please?
I will. So we'll start with education. What are the key areas affecting education, and what are the strategies that you plan to put in place to address them? You have 2 minutes.
Yes, the main strategy that we have is we got to revise the curriculum. The curriculum is not producing what our society needs. We have too many needs, and it's costing us a lot of money. Like I said before, we have to import teachers, we have to import nurses, we have to import doctors, we have to import skills people. This general education in which we are getting is no good for us. And we don't have to wait for America to approve it. We have to look out for what's best for our people. So we believe that in education, that all students that go through the public school should come out with some kind of skills. They need a skill. We're graduating people from K grade to 12, 18 years old, and they come out with no skill to immediately help themselves or their family. But they could go to the army to kill people. That's not right. We got to provide our students with a skill upon graduation. That's the main thing that we have to do. Then we have a situation where we have a large influx of students who are speaking French and Spanish. We have to employ more bilingual teachers to help that situation so that these children don't be left behind, and also invest more money in early education, the socialization process of our youths.
Thank you. Senator Vialet?
Thank you so much. I think the most important area that we need to address in education is the learning loss. For the last 5 years, a student has not had a normal school year. We go back to Hurricane Maria and Irma, in which schools were closed, we were in double session. You fast forward to COVID, in which students went to school virtually, literally for 2 years. In studies all across the nation, there's been a clear indication that students have fallen back 1 and 2 grade levels. In the testing scores we received from the Department of Education, we're at the lowest level that we've been at for a long period of time. So we must address the learning loss by being able to offer each student a grade level competency exam. We need to know what grade level they're on. And if they don't meet those grade level competencies for language art and math, etc., then we need to develop a program or a plan that will address those students' needs. We need one-on-one tutoring, we need after-school program, we need to have extended summer school, where we mandate that those individuals who do not meet the grade level competencies, that they must go to school during the summer to be able to catch up on those areas that they are deficient in. We need wraparound services in our school. We have had a lot of fights recently, and students are just going back to school after being suspended. We need grade level assemblies. We need to have counseling in the school, intensive counseling. We have a lot of students that have deep-rooted issues. Students who have experienced some traumatic experience in their life, and we're just hoping that they're going to work it out on their own. They're not capable. We need to be able to pull them out and offer those services that are going to make those students able to go to school and be able to learn on a regular basis. We need strong alternative schools, very, very strong alternative schools. We can't resort to expelling students from school, but we need to have those strong alternative schools where we'll be able to offer all of the wraparound services and then send them back to the home
Thank
school.
you, Senator.
Thank you so much.
Governor Bryan?
If you listen to people talk now, they'd say the #1 problem with education is maintenance. Every discussion we have with education over the last 3 years is about maintenance, about this leaking or that leaking. The reality is, with all the problems that we have, every year, even with COVID, we have been able to graduate people that have gone to the top schools in the nation. Do we have learning loss? Absolutely. What are we doing about that? So we've shortened the classes now in order that in the afternoon we can actually do the tutoring. And we are able to pay teachers now during the summer, pay them extra. You know, it breaks my heart every time I see a teacher in Home Depot or someplace else working. We don't have to do that anymore. I've commanded the Commissioner of Education to pay $25 an hour, whatever the rate it is that it's going to make to bring our teachers in and get them to stay from 3 to 7 to give our students that learning loss compensation. Let's do it. We have made a lot of compacts with people, but the reality is that every single department and every single state in the nation is suffering from finding talent in social and psychological services. We are bringing those to the school. And you know what we need to do? We need to focus on the schools that are poverty-stricken and surrounded by neighborhoods with parents who are struggling to make their ends meet for their families. The teachers, we have supported and has been a problem for a long time, getting teachers into our schools. That's why we gave the AFT one of the most richest contracts that they have ever seen. And that is driving the minimum salary for teachers in October up to $49,000. We're almost there to 50. We gave the teachers an incentive, $1,200 each one during COVID to make sure that they were able to serve students. But you gotta look and think big. Right now, we're making sure that every single public housing community and every single community has access to the internet. Free internet for our kids that allow them to get the education and access to the information they need.
Governor. Thank you, Governor. Mr. Pickard?
Yes, ma'am. In order for students to pay attention, it has to be in an environment where they can be controlled to be attended. We have schools. My first thing is to make sure that all schools have cafeterias once again. My next thing is to make sure that all the leaking roofs are stopped. In other words, my thing is to make sure that we have maintenance departments. We have manpower to conduct the maintenance. As the governor said in his administration, we have a problem with maintenance. We're going on 3 years and 10 months. My thing is to tackle that immediately so that the teachers will have a safe environment to teach and the students will have a safe environment to learn. In order to have a standardized test, you must have a standardized curriculum, so to speak, syllabus across the table. St. Croix, St. Thomas, St. John and Water Island. All teachers must be on the same accordance, the same balance, teaching the same stuff. We don't have that right now. That's one thing I plan, another thing I plan to attack as well. Mostly, last time since 2020, COVID, a lot of students lost a lot of time in school. My thing is to add an extra half an hour, 245 minutes of the day, at the end of the day, so that each student, before being dismissed to go home, that teacher will go over their present homework for that day. That way it helps the parents who may not be able to understand or comprehend the homework assignment, and it helps the students to understand what his or her assignment is to do that day for the next day. So we must have as many possible avenues to help the students catch up on lost time. And that's what we need.
Thank you, Mr. Pickard. Our next question, also with respect to education, Senator Vialet, we'll start with you. Bill number 340079 proposes to separate out the management of education's physical facilities, including construction and maintenance, as a separate bureau from the academic areas. The commissioner then would be relieved from the facilities responsibilities to focus on the academic issues. What is your thinking on this proposal? You have 60 seconds.
It just creates another level of bureaucracy. Literally, we have a separate maintenance department right now in the Department of Education. We have engineers who work for that department. We have a number of individuals who work for the department. But I think that the mistake that was made was when they took those skilled workers out of the school. Before, you had maintenance workers who were assigned to each school to include laborers, a maintenance mechanic. They took them out and they centralized those individuals and they began to use a lot of contracts. We gotta go back to where you have individuals who are working on the school level that could take care of the problems that occur on a daily basis. Those schools that have vocational programs, CTEC program, those programs should be utilized to help them in the school. If you have a plumbing class, you should not have to hire a plumber when you have students that are there that are taking a course and you could give them on-the-job training. We must have a different approach. You need continuous annual maintenance, not starting to maintain the school 1 week before school start. You saw the schedule that was just released for Central High.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Bryan?
I am in full support of the legislation by Senate President Donna Frett Gregory. The realization is that we already do that for every other department. All of the buildings of the government should belong to property and procurement and be maintained by the Department of Public Works. You have an education commissioner that's always engaged in a conversation about maintenance instead of grades. Separation of these responsibilities will allow her to act as a tenant inside of the building. That way she can concentrate on what counts: school performance. We have school-based maintenance people right now. The fact of the matter is that the schools average 50 to 60 years old. And Mr. Vialet can tell you, he was the one for the last 6 years in the budget, putting $1 million for maintenance into the schools and knowing that how can $1 million help a 60-year-old school? Over 23 educational facilities that we had in this territory. Back in 2010, Interior told us that it would take over $1 billion. That's way before Albert Bryan ever entered the scene. Our schools are in deep trouble in terms of maintenance, and we need to move it out.
Mr. Pickard?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Bryan, he spoke about Kenneth Mapp, former governor, about his problem as it pertains to education and school and infrastructure. And the condition was in. He promised to make sure that when he was elected as governor, he will rectify that entire problem. He obviously failed. I believe we should separate. Principals have enough on their plate as it is to start with, right? A completely different maintenance department is what we need. We have a maintenance problem, a maintenance issue. The mere fact that we visually see the problem in the infrastructure that is taking place in schools throughout the entire territory, it physically shows it. Evidence is right there. The biggest problem with us is that we don't stay on top of our maintenance issue. We stand there and allow it to rot away. Prime case, an example. If a building is suffering with mold infested, and they say, okay, let's go ahead and rent another building. That building that belongs to the government just sits there. The whole purpose of moving to another building is to fix that building so that we can go back in there instead of paying for rent.
Thank you.
At the
Thank you.
end, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Pickard.
Thank you.
Well,
Mr. Frett?
I don't think we need to make a separate department for maintenance. I think we have that people in school, but one of the major problems is this money that is set aside for maintenance, does it go to the Department of Education or should it be divided to each school? I think what is happening is that the people who maintain particular school, they don't have the resources immediately to respond to a situation. And I think we need to be able to look at that. But to create a whole nother bureaucracy, I'm not for that. But make monies available directly to the school so that they could address immediate concerns that take place within the school.
Sorry, but I never mentioned Mr. Mapp or anything about schools in what I was saying. What I did say is that the schools have not been maintained for 30 and 40 years. It's impossible to think that you can come in 3.5 years and rectify that problem. The roads have not been maintained, the hospitals have not been maintained, the retirement system hasn't been retained, WAP hasn't been maintained. But we came in and we fixed a lot of that. And we're on the road to fixing more. And the way that we do that is by managing the government's money in a way that is cost effective and giving people the resources that they need. That is a very hard thing to do when you don't have any money, like the Virgin Islands has been for a long time. Finally, we have a chance to do these things, but we only have so much people to do it. We have less employees than we had in 2007. So the problem is trying to get everything through a very small hose of productivity. So while I agree with everything that my colleagues up here are saying, the reality when you do the job is that every single business in the Virgin Islands is looking for employees and talent to do it. And so is the government. We're doing the best we can with what we have. But education would be better served with maintenance outside.
Thank you, Governor.
Thank you. No, I'm
No.
sorry.
He mentioned me.
No,
He said I
I'm-
did.
No,
He didn't mention me. He said that he didn't see anything about map work. In fact, he did. In
no,
his
he did not.
campaign,
But
He
he
didn't-
rebutted your
you said
comment,
in the
Mr.
campaign, you
Is there
Pickard.
anything else about you?
you had the vetoes and everything. I said me. But
Senator
map, I
Vialet.
spoke about it. And
Mr.
then you
Pickard, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Senator Vialet, you've got 45 seconds.
Thank you so much. The governor clearly said that Mr. Vialet has passed $1 million for maintenance, but he forget that he sends the budget down. And he has never recommended more than $1 million. And in fact, we have given them $2 million every year. But in addition to that, 2019 my bill appropriated some $5.2 million from the PFA for maintenance of schools in the territory. Of the $5.2 million that was appropriated 3 years ago, he has spent less than $200,000. The $5 million is still sitting in account. The Department of Education received over $200 million in funds as a result of COVID. Those monies are sitting there in an account with no clear plan as to how this administration is going to spend those monies. We fast forward and the commissioner just recently said she's going to resubmit the plan for the $200 million because the plan that was sent is not capable of moving the department in the direction that she thinks it needs to move in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I would remind all of you, please, we're asking you to give us your strategies for how we are going to address these issues that we're asking you to identify. The next question is with respect to health, and I believe we start with you, Governor?
It's going to be, no. Senator Vialet.
So Senator Vialet, okay. What are the key areas affecting the healthcare system? What strategies will you put in place to address our struggling healthcare system? You have 2 minutes.
Thank you so much. Facilities, that is the first. GFL not, despite all of the announcements that it's going to open by a particular date, still is shuttered, still closed. The maintenance building, after the recent rains were totally flooded, the maintenance building that is being constructed, we need to make sure that we're able to open GFL North in a short period of time. I would suggest that the contractor that is working on the project be told that they have to double up on the manpower, they have to work longer hours because we're flying individuals out on a regular basis. When you look at the staffing at the hospitals, we have a shortage of staff in nurses, with physicians, and a number of other areas. The administration need to immediately conclude the negotiations with the nurses union. That negotiation have been taking place for the last year and 2 months. They have been promised that they're going to have a new contract. The new contract has not materialized. We need to provide retention bonuses for those nurses so our nurses don't go to these traveling companies. We need to have recruitment drive where we offer an incentive for individuals who are willing to come to work for the Virgin Islands. We need to look at the same thing we're doing with education and look at the Philippines and see how many nurses from the Philippines or doctors from the Philippines we could recruit to the Virgin Islands using the visa program. Back in the 70s, we had a tremendous amount of doctors from the Philippines that relocated to the Virgin Islands and stayed here for 30, 35 years. We must have a clear plan as to how we're going to be able to transition all of these facilities to be able to reopen. We have the Kimmelman Center, we have the Myra Keaton Clinic in St. John that is now in a modular unit. We have to have those clear plans as to how we're going to be able to move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Bryan, you have two minutes.
Yes, the question was, what are you going to do about the healthcare in the Virgin Islands? Not about JFL Hospital. Mr. Vialet needs to realize that he won't be the governor of St. Croix. He'll be the governor of the Virgin Islands. And when you look at the healthcare system of the Virgin Islands, there's a concerted plan and effort to develop all of these buildings and get them to the same standard. So whether it's Charlotte Kimmelman, JFL, Snyder Regional, or Myra Keating, whether it's our skilled nursing facilities, which we are building 2 of them, or the health building. First, we have to get them to a standard. And then we have to take a serious look at partnering with a private sector healthcare organization that can do the things we need to do to make our healthcare work. He talks about retention bonuses. Every single nurse, respiratory therapist, and allied health person got a $7,000 bonus this year. You know why? because we have been issuing retention plan. Each hospital was given $10 million in order to create recruitment plans or do whatever else they needed in order to bring resources to them. Over the last 2 years, we've spent over $100 million in healthcare. Yes, $100 million in healthcare, bringing access to our hospital, whether COVID tests and other resources to keep them afloat, because the unfunded care didn't go away. We still had it. JFL North needs to be completed. We inherited a bad project with bad management, and we're almost there. It will get open. But it will be the state-of-the-art healthcare center for the Virgin Islands. As soon as I came in, I knew it would be a time before we got the hospital where it needs to be. So that's why we issued the certificate of needs in order to get other urgent care organizations up in St. Croix. The hospital in St. Thomas has a new infectious wing. We have an extra hospital in St. Croix at the National Guard Training Center. We've invested the money in bringing our mental health aboard and opening up the Idris Shelterburn complex. We're having now expanding with Cigna.
Thank you.
Thank you, Governor. Mr. Pickard?
Thank you, ma'am. First things first, use one of our government buildings that's abandoned. My thing is to open up a children's hospital, the first one ever in history in the Virgin Islands. I'm already in communication with the Shriners for the Shriner Hospital in Savannah, Georgia, who is on standby for me as it pertains to that. And of course, we have to make sure the contractors honor the beginning as well as the ending date for that children's hospital. Also, open up another medical center. That's going to be for rehabilitation purposes only, for those patients who are recovering from surgery, as well as those that are suffering from mental challenges, as well as Narcotics Anonymous and AA. That particular building will be for them. That will automatically reduce the amount of people in Juan Louis Hospital or North in the event that it does open anytime soon. Healthcare, we all know that Cigna is by far the biggest insurance company in history here in the Virgin Islands. When a patient leaves the island to go seek treatment, that company, or rather that doctor or that hospital facility, the insurance money is going towards them. We need to keep the money here. Healthcare, as people get older, as it pertains to the elderly, they gradually leave the Virgin Islands to seek better treatment in the United States. We have to keep them here. It's all about retention. In order to do that, we have to provide the perfect healthcare. But in order to do that, we have to provide the perfect infrastructure. In order to do that, we have to hold these contractors accountable for their ending date. In my administration, if the contractor does not finish their date at 12:01, 1 minute past 12, my thing is to financially sanction that contractor, because we don't have time to waste. People's lives are at jeopardy right now, and that's what I'm looking for.
Thank you, Mr. Pickard.
Thank you.
Mr. Frett?
Well, it should be clear to everybody that this whole process about healthcare is taking too long, definitely too long. And what the Frett Miller administration would do, based on where it's at, if it's not acceptable, we would immediately call a state of emergency for the healthcare facilities and get the experts in here to build this hospital as fast as possible. The difference between we and the administration is that we don't have to touch the money, but we want the buildings up. We want the services going for our people. And that's the main thing for the Frett Miller administration. After we get the facilities up, then we incorporate the knowledge of the doctors that are here and our local people who are in the medical field away to how best to staff and equip this particular hospital. Use them. Then after we get the equipment and the staffing, then we also need to contact one of the major hospitals on the mainland and develop some kind of relationship with them for services that we can't do. Things like that we have to do. But the main thing is to get this hospital up. We are losing too much money. Our people are losing too much people. And this is an opportunity. One of the things that the Frett Miller team have is healthcare economics. We want to be the biggest healthcare mega in the whole Caribbean, and we can do it. And now is the opportunity, and too much time is being wasted.
Thank you, Mr. Frett. So the third area of concern from the polls was in the area of crime, and certainly that's in the headlines just about on a daily basis. So what are the key factors that you see affecting crime in our community, and what are your strategies for addressing the problem? Governor Bryan, we start with you.
How much time?
2 minutes.
So crime is a pervasive problem and you never get it to go to zero, but we've taken concerted steps to deal with crime. Some I can talk about and some I can't talk about. One of the things that we're very proud of is the 164 cameras that we've deployed in the Virgin Islands. Now we can see every license plate, every person that's moving along and traversing our highways. Because for years we've been complaining about not having enough officers. We have to substitute it with technology. The police department now has 4 drones that they can use in surveillance tactics. They have access to all kinds of equipment that makes solving crime easier. But it's not just about that. It's about creating the opportunities like free college tuition for kids that can't go to school. It's about undocumented people being able to go to college. We have a lot of people here that went through our entire education system, but when they graduate from high school, they can't go to college because they don't have a social security number. It's not required in the Department of Education. The other thing is rehabilitation. We have to look at how do we get these youngsters that have made mistakes in their 20s back into society and be able to erase their record. For nonviolent crimes, we need to be able to see a path so those people can integrate. If they can't integrate, then they're going to commit more crimes. Activity. We have invested over $1 million in our best lives, not only for our senior citizens, but for our young people as well. Our sports, parks, and recreation have been repaving all of the tennis courts and basketball courts, trying to get people healthy, but trying to get students engaged. In the next 4 years, you will see an incredible amount of after-school activity, be it dance, boating, fishing, whatever, just to get students up and engaged. The development of the Wheatley Skills Center here in Curran Terrace in St. Thomas is going to make getting those skills even easier. Our financial fellowship program that allows students to graduate from college and come to the government to work to get experience is incredible. And the $10 million we have for apprenticeship is working real well in getting those skills there.
Thank you, Governor. Mr. Pickard?
Yes, ma'am. What's the governor not telling you is that there's something called consent decree. Consent decree basically is we paying the federal agency to come down here and supervise the law enforcement officers. So we're paying supervisors to supervise supervisors. Consent decree has to do with civil rights violation under the color of law, Title 18 in USC Code. But it basically means that right now, law enforcement officers, VIPD, they can't even go like this to you without getting arrested. The criminals know that, and they're taking it to their advantage. Crime is completely out of control. My thing is to get rid of consent decree, but place it with something else, which is the SOP, Standard Operation Procedure. The Virgin Islands Police Department has never had a SOP. Why can I tell you that? Because I'm a former law enforcement officer. There is nothing, nowhere in the books when you're given a badge, they were supposed to have given you a book to tell you what to do in every single situation. But nobody knows what to do. So they bring down consent decree, and the only thing it's done is I've arrested a lot of law enforcement officers on a civil rights violation. In the Pickard-Turnbull administration, we're gonna take the handcuffs off of the officers so they can actually do their job. You'll have police officers tell you, "Son Pickard, no, sir, I'm gonna take the scenic route when there is a discharge and a shot." Because if we rough them up, next you know we're gonna go to jail for consent decree. They just need to be trained. When you have in-service training, it has to do more than just discharging a firearm or running around in circles. They need to be taught about Title 18 and Title 14. They need to be taught about a SOP once it's implemented. That will take part in reducing crime. We all know that only God himself can stop crime. But we can play a part as far as reducing it by getting rid of consent decree.
Thank you, Mr. Pickard.
Thank you,
Mr.
ma'am.
Frett?
Well, the first thing, and if you talk to your law enforcement officers, you'll see that what we have to do is put our people to work. We have all this money. Our society is in deployable position. Put these young men to work. That's the first thing that we have to do. When after Maryland and we have put people to work, crime was different. Crime was down. You know, now we have our society look like less than a third world countries, no activity is going on, and our brothers and sisters are just sitting on the sideline with nothing to do. That's the first thing. Then we got to get back to community policing. I don't know if you all remember that program we had. That was a federal program. Put the police them in the communities. Let them become a part of the communities. Next, we have to have our prisons have real rehabilitation. It's not happening. We need to pass laws that will attach things that if you learn a trade, maybe if your sentence can be reduced, things like this. And then we have to find jobs for those who come out to refit them back into our society. And then the last thing is in school, we have to tell our children what is their responsibility. How much of us went to school? Were you ever told what was your responsibility to your fellow man? Were you ever told what was your responsibility to your community? What was your responsibility to the bigger society? What was the responsibility to your race? Have you ever been told that? We were never told that. So everybody just doing their own little thing and wants to get money, to do whatever they want to do. The education is lacking. The purpose is lacking. And if you look what's taking place in America, we'd be surprised if there's not a civil war broke out. Who is going to protect us when all our young men is in jail?
Thank you, Mr. Frett. Senator Vialet?
Violence has become a normalcy in our community, and that's not a good thing. It's not a good thing at all. We have so many students who have witnessed a violent act or know someone that was shot or stabbed, and it develops these deep-rooted issues in these particular young individuals. I remember I had an 8th grader that was laughing after a student whose brother was recently killed. And I pulled her into the main office and I said, why would you be so insensitive to laugh after someone who just lost a family member? And she came into my office and she said, I am laughing after him because he killed my brother. So from 8th grade, you could have seen those deep-rooted issues. We need to stop the next generation of criminals. You stop the next generation of criminals by having those wraparound services, by pulling those individuals out who we know went through a traumatic experience and being able to provide counseling to them. I called the Commissioner of Human Services and I offered, we are going to give you $200,000 to be able to provide counseling for the families of crime victims, those who lost a life and those who did the act. The commissioner clearly said, I have sufficient monies. I can do that. We have federal funds to do it, but it is not being done. So immediately, that would be one of the areas that I enact because you need to stop the next generation. If you don't stop the next generation, you arrest 10, and there's 10 that's going to replace that 10. So you have to stop the next generation. We need to have a redeployment of our officers. They all need to hit the street, and they need to hit the street when crimes are occurring. Not when they want, not 8 to 5. You got to let them hit the street when most of those crimes are taking place on a regular basis. We have to put GPS in all cars so that we can know where every single unit is at a particular time of the day so that we can be able to make sure that there's a response when something is happening. We have to go back and try to encourage a lot of our young officers who have retired and are still in their 40s to come back to the force and provide mentoring for the young officers.
Thank you, Senator
Thank
Vialet.
you. And the fourth area of concern for the voters in the poll had to do with WAPA. So I'll ask you to indicate what your strategies are for addressing the key areas of concern at WAPA. And we're going to begin with Mr. Pickard as the first responder.
Yes, ma'am. So the first thing I plan to do is to restructure the entire WAPA board.
2 minutes.
The executive boards. It's obviously they're not doing a job. Next thing, WAPA has been almost a 40-year monopoly that has crucified every Virgin Islanders for a year, yet no one can find a solution for it. There are so many different options as it pertains to power, or rather to energy. You have aqua energy, you have windmill energy, you have solar energy, and of course, at the last one, you have WAPA. In the Pickard administration, our job is to provide options for you to choose. We all know how expensive it is, and it has been for years for WAPA. At least in our administration, you'll be able to choose which energy source you would like to take up to better suit your financial budget. And that is the main thing we have to do. We have to provide options because WAPA, for sure, is not an option.
Thank you, Mr. Pickard.
Thank you, Mr. Pickard.
Thank you,
We
ma'am.
move on to Mr. Frett.
Well, it is clear we need a new plant, period. And what we have to do again is create a state of emergency for WAPA. We can't wait. WAPA is preventing our people from going and bringing any type of economic activity to the Virgin Islands. We need to get the help from the two leading countries in natural resources in running a plant. We need to start to rely on the sun, water, wind, and garbage. We need to ask, once we call a state of emergency, we need to ask the United States to help us to establish a new plant on these natural resources that is available to us. Once we have to go on the market to buy fossil fuel or natural gas, it's not going to work. We will never be able to afford the prices, the lower prices that is needed to stimulate this economy. We'll never be able to do it. And secondly, this WAPA board, there's more expertise inside a WAPA than in the board. We don't need no board. We need to get rid of that particular board. You understand? And leave WAPA, the director who's appointed by the governor, be accountable to him. This, if you want further reference, take the letter that the delegate wrote to the governor and to the senators, telling them the same thing. Because once you call a state of emergency, it opens up you for forgiveness of certain loans that you have, and it opens up WAPA to new monies that is not available unless you're in a state of emergency. And we can do things to correct WAPA. And I want to say this clearly, and lastly, WAPA is not only there to provide us with reliable current, reliable electricity, it's also a revenue source to make money to reinvest into our people to get them the things that they need to survive.
Thank you, Mr. Frett. Senator Vialet.
We need alternative energy options. Well, that is not going to solve the problem. That is going to reduce the LEAC. The big issue that we have is the base rate. The base rate is now more than 22 cents per kilowatt hour. It is more than any state across the nation total kilowatt cost. The base rate is so high because of the deals that were made with Vital. And we are paying Vital a tremendous amount of monies, or owe Vital a tremendous amount of monies that have WAPA held hostage. We are paying some $160 million as a loan to Vital at 14% interest. So the first thing I would do is to bring Vital to the table and negotiate with them to be able to extend the loan, refinance it out to 30 years, they had a 5-year term, refinance the loan out at a lower interest rate. We have been contesting the cost that Vital charged the Virgin Islands, and Vital has been sued in every country that they have operated in for providing false information. So there's no reason why we can't challenge them as to the agreement that they entered into with the government of the Virgin Islands. We are paying Vital every year $12 million to run the propane facility. We could hire 10 engineers at $200,000 and save $10 million. We're paying over $13,000 or $16,000 for a boat to sit outside St. Thomas Harbor. All of these are areas that we must revisit, and we have to bring all those players to the table and be able to tell them we cannot continue this way, because the LEAC could go to 0 cents and you're going to still have 22 cents, which is higher than every state across the nation. The first thing that the Vialet team will do is to implement the bill that the governor vetoed, we overrode, and he still failed to implement that bill because he does not want subject area expertise on the WAPA board.
Thank you.
So I get a rebuttal and I get 2 minutes because he mentioned my name.
Yeah.
So first of all, I want to say that the biggest problem that WAPA had in the first place was the government carried a $29 million bill for decades and never paid it off. We paid it off in the first year of our administration. Hasn't been done in decades. The second thing is that we need to make WAPA renewable, affordable, and reliable. And that's a strategy we have. Well, everybody was excited with the passing of this hurricane and the lights are staying on. That's not an accident. That's because of all the work that has been done to put in the composite poles and bring the lines up above the tree line so that they're not interrupted during the storm. It's the undergrounding that WAPA is doing now, and also the work that has been done on the substations. You talk about renewable. The WAPA CEO just introduced a plan to the CEO, to PSC, and told him about turning St. Croix into a renewable island and bringing that power grid down. The reason why Mr. Vialet can tell you about VTOL is because he's been reading the plan. He's been what we've been trying to do for over the last 2 years is refinance the VTOL debt and all the other debt that WAPA has. He is correct. There is a high base rate, but these are things that is already happening. You see, the problem with us is we keep meddling and meddling. The one thing that COVID showed me is sometimes you need to pick a row and then you need to hold that row all the way to the end. Constantly mixing things and adding things to the soup creates confusion. We have a plan that's going to create renewable opportunities, lower WAPA's debt, and at the same time, we just introduced a renewable project that allows for individuals to come completely off the grid at 1% interest with no money down through the Energy Office. That is the first time any governor has made a firm commitment to say that WAPA is going to be renewable. We're not talking about things that we're going to do. We're talking about things that are already in progress. The initiatives that WAPA have also finally creates 4 new generators that allow them not to burn these big generators with 20 megawatts or more at a time. Now we could run generators and start them up more quickly because of the type of generators they are. WAPA has a lot of problems, and they've been problems since I was a kid, and Unit 13 here in St. Thomas was breaking down every week. But you can't fix those in 3.5 years. You don't need constant CEOs. We have had 5 over the last 10 years. What we need is consistency, sticking to the plan, making sure that we have the commitment of the board and everybody online in order to make sure that we fulfill what we intend to do. But this constant switching out, the legislature harassed the WAPA team till everybody resigned or was fired. We have a whole new team, and we start all over again. It's not the people, it's the commitment of the leadership in getting it done.
Thank you, thank you. And
I had a rebut too.
Oh, well, okay, well, could you make it as short as possible? Because we're running out of time.
I'll concede my rebuttal so we can ask more questions.
I appreciate that. Thank you so very much. So our very last question before we move to the end and the closing, your closing statements, is about the economy. We just couldn't close this out. I think we really needed 3 hours, you know, guys. This was a great discussion, and I want to thank you for all of your ideas. But I wanted to, we describe ourselves often as a resilient people. And resilience means the ability to bounce back to normalcy after a blow to the system. So how would you build economic resilience if you're elected? That's a very important question. And our first responder here is Mr. Frett. How will you build economic resilience?
Well, it's no doubt that we have to diversify our economic portfolio.
Excuse me, I was just told that we can only afford 60 seconds for this response.
Right, simple. Healthcare economics, sports tourism, creating and battling water and exporting it, fish farming. You know, these are some of the ideas that the Frett Miller have. And I think once we do that, you know, which would lead to self-sufficiency, then we will do a good job for the people of the Virgin Islands.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Vialet?
We need to diversify the economy, and I think we have a rare time in history that the Virgin Islands would be able to achieve that particular goal. With what is going on across the nation, what is going on across the world, the US have quickly realized that outsourcing all of the manufacturing to different countries has created a problem. There is a unique time now that we can lure those companies or attract those companies back to the Virgin Islands through our EDC program and offering them those tax incentives. We heard the cry when pharmaceuticals were not able to come to the US. We heard the cry with baby milk not being able to ship to the US. How can the Virgin Islands enter into that particular realm, that particular market, where we're able to have meetings, niche meetings with particular entities, the pharmaceutical, other entities, where we can attract them to come to the Virgin Islands. And lastly, I passed the Hotel Development Act that brought Frenchman Reef back to St. Thomas, redeveloped Frenchman Reef to keep the tourism industry going.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Governor?
We are in the information age. Economies are not about luring companies. Resilience is not about getting new EDC companies here. What it is about people, about investing in individuals that are resilient, free tuition, free trade works, making sure that people create value, giving people homes and investing $100,000 to buy down the price so they immediately have an asset to pass on to their next generation. Resilient people make resilient families. Resilient families make resilient communities. Resilient communities make a stronger Virgin Islands. We have to remember, you can work from anywhere now. COVID has shown us that Virgin Islanders can take up positions globally and be able to bring that money right back here to the Virgin Islands. We don't need to spoil our waters or shores and bring more pollutants and things. We can get Virgin Islanders to work in Chicago or Maine or Boston, right from Bodo, Carrot Bay, Frederickstead. And those people will be earners. And what will they do with their money? Spend it right here in the Virgin Islands, build a home in the Virgin Islands. And when all these families are strong, then we are truly resilient.
Thank you, Governor.
Thank you, Mr. Pickard.
Yes, ma'am. What we need to do is to invest in our local entrepreneurs. And by doing that, we can capitalize in tourism. But in order for us to invest in our local vendors, our local entrepreneurs, we have to believe in them. Departments like the EDA, they only give collateral loans. They do not give non-collateral loans. Our thing is to make sure that EDA gives collateral loans. And by matching that money, that match money for the government will be the collateral for those entrepreneurs who wants to open up their business. He's right. During COVID-19, so many people became entrepreneurs that they never knew it was in them. They never knew it existed. But the problem they kept facing was that they couldn't get the money to start off that projected project that they needed it. It can be done. The government has the access. We have the money. One of the main things is to make sure that the EDA opens back up loans for those who have no collateral.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And so we're coming now to your closing statements. We have to cut down because you guys have been just really well-spoken. We have to cut down your closing statement to 50 seconds. And so tell the viewing public why you think that you are uniquely a standout person to be governor. So we'll start now as the first responder here with Senator Vialet.
36 years in government, 29 years in education. A running mate that worked at Government House, worked at Sports Park and Recreation, worked in education, chair of the Finance Committee, a running mate who's chair of disaster recovery, a full understanding of the issues, being able to know the budget of the government of the Virgin Islands inside out, knowing how each department functions and what are the strengths and what are the weaknesses, a team that is willing to work together, a team that is willing to hit the ground running, a team that would not use an accomplishment as an 8% or getting an income tax check, but a team that will address the issues of healthcare, education, crime, and reducing the WAPA rate that individuals are paying on a regular basis. We must invest in the people of the Virgin Islands.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Governor?
Virgin Islanders, thank you for having me in your homes tonight, and thank you to the League of Women Voters. The question you need to ask yourself is it broken? Has the governor of the Virgin Islands made the kind of decided progress in making the Virgin Islands have a better quality of life? And when you look around, you know that you have a team of Tregenza and I that has been tested, tried, and proven true. Let us continue to do all the good things that we've done. In the 3.5 years we have paid you service, we have broken bread, we have partied, we have cried, and we have been through some rough times, but we did it together. And because of that, we're stronger than ever. And when you look at me, you know that I put people first. So whether I meet you in the Juve or I talk to you in hospital or I met you at the schools, you know where we stand and you know who can make this territory stronger.
Thank you, Governor.
Thank you, Mr. Pickard.
Yes, ma'am. 36 years in the government, 2 years in the Senate, 3 years and 10 months as governor. Yet our problems still exist. Healthcare, education, infrastructure, crime, the list goes on. I humbly ask you to give the Pickard-Turnbull administration a time and a chance to be successful. Our job is simple. It's to hold people accountable for their actions. Things that my candidates haven't done for years, I'd rather have never done. We have no more time to waste. Contractors and unforeseen projects, change orders continue to lapse a project out. We believe in a beginning date of a project and an ending date. And our deal is to make sure that the ending dates come to an end. Thank you for inviting me in your lives, your homes. I look forward to working with you as the governor of the Virgin Islands. Because at the beginning and end day, we here, all standing here, we're all Virgin Islanders.
Thank you, Mr. Frett.
Let me say this. Again, you heard them talk about technology. Technology only provides jobs for a small amount of people. We must be concerned about the masses of people. And there can be no jobs, no progress for our people without some form of industry to employ these masses of people. The Frett Miller team is telling our people, we have created a situation here that is totally out of our hands. Our leaders of the 60s said that we must control the economics in our country if we're going to do anything for our people. We have let that gone. And then now we have a bunch of bureaucrats who's coming into the government who wants to direct the government resources to benefit them after they leave services. The Frett Miller team is going to put you, the people of the Virgin Islands, to be more competitive under this system by developing what you have.
Thank you, Mr. Frett, for your response. And thank you, candidates and timer and viewers. And thank you, WTJX and staff, for today's program that brought candidates for the position of governor of the U.S. Virgin Islands to the attention of the voting public. The League of Women Voters hopes that this program has helped you, and I think it should have. It helped you in understanding the candidates, and in so doing, inform your vote in November.
The League reminds you that your vote determines the future of the Virgin Islands. Every vote does count. During elections, we often see an individual who barely makes the cut because a few more people did vote, or one who barely loses and wishes only a few more persons had voted. So let your voice be heard by your vote. It's your right. Take it.
Thank you for watching. I'm Gwen Marie Moolenaar, President of the League of Women Voters of the Virgin Islands, with co-moderator, Attorney Rosalie Ballentine, saying, vote early or vote in November. Just be sure to vote.